Good morning, Father Wade. On this August 18, 2019, can you tell me what's the sermon about today?
Today is a very distressing gospel. Jesus says he's under stress and that he's going to separate families because he is concerned about the blinders people wear, that we wear. That's what I'll address in the sermon, and I think it's good news that there are things that we can wear other than blinders.
In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. In the 9th chapter, the Gospel of Luke took a rather severe turn. And it was this moment when Jesus took his three of his disciples up the mount, and they experienced Jesus being transfigured into pure light and holiness, understanding perhaps for the first time that God was surely with this particular man. In fact, with Elijah and Moses present on that Mount of Transfiguration, they experienced the divinity, the express power of God in Jesus Christ. And as any of us would have, when you have an experience of raw and pure grace, and you see things as they're meant to be, then you want to not only remember, but you want to hold in place exactly what that moment meant to you. And so Peter, thinking quickly on his feet, and says, in the tradition of Judaism, there was a feast of booths where they would build booths and live in this very primitive way for a period of time. Let's build some booths up here and never leave. And we've always heard about the idea of staying on the mountaintop, right? And that's exactly where that metaphor comes from. But let's build some booths, and let's let this experience, this moment, last forever. And Jesus takes them back down the mountain, and says, "This is not going to end well. In fact, I'm headed to Jerusalem, and when I get to Jerusalem, I'm going to be betrayed by y'all and others. I'm going to be treated terribly. They're going to viciously assault me and murder me. They're going to hang me on a tree. And the last thing you're going to see of me is a bloody mess." So why is it that Jesus, just when we get comfortable that all is going to be well, has these stark predictions of his passion? Or how, after the feeding of the 5,000, when there is this magical sense that God is providing for his people as he did when they were in the wilderness wandering, this Jesus is going to solve all of our problems, is going to make sure that we have all that we will ever need forever, and the fear of life can go away if I simply trust Jesus. And some people caught on how wonderful Jesus was, and they came up to him and said, Master, I'll follow you anywhere." He said, "Come on, let's go." He said, "But first I want to go bury my father." And Jesus, after doing this fantastic feat, this wonderful miracle of God's love, says, "Let the dead bury their own dead." And another says, "Well, can I go by and I just want to go say goodbye to my family, then I'll follow you. Unless you keep your hand on the plow," he says, "you will not inherit the kingdom of God." As soon as there is this experience of grace and Jesus sees the clinging to comfort or the status quo or anything that stands between us and our call to follow him into the kingdom, he interrupts that sense of comfort. The old phrase of Jesus afflicts the comfortable and comforts the afflicted is real. And in this gospel, Jesus says, I am under stress. I am under stress, and I am headed to Jerusalem, and I know what that means. I know what is going to happen to me, and I know the meaning of what it means. But anything that keeps you and me, he is saying, from being able to hear the gospel and the glaring hard truth of the gospel is in the way of following me. And so he doesn't spare anything. And this is incredibly difficult for us, this passage that we read today. As if Jesus really is deliberately trying to create grief in families. He's trying to bust up families and divide families. There's a bit of classic Jewish teaching hyperbole in this. But on the other hand, there is also this recognition that anything that constitutes the status quo puts blinders on us. And what happens when we wear blinders? We're willing to see either what we're accustomed to seeing, what we're comfortable seeing, what helps us feel safe or secure or happy. We're going to let that in. And the things that dwell in our midst that we don't want to see are those things that will knock us off our sense of internal security. So all of us are biased, and we wear blinders, and we seek the things that give us comfort. I think that's an aspect of being human. But status quo and blinders are limitations. They're limitations. And Jesus is seeing in the family units of Galilee and Jerusalem that individuals that desire to follow him cannot let go. They'll find something, anything to inhibit their capacity to say yes to God, to say yes. When Jesus sees the cross, and he sees anything or anybody that attempts to stop him from making that journey to Jerusalem, he takes umbrage. He says to the crowds, when you see the cloud rising in the west, you say it's going to rain, and you know it's going to happen. He says to Texans, when you see that south wind blowing, there will be a scorching heat, and we know it's coming. Unless we're getting blessed with rain on the Gulf, right? But why can't you interpret the present time, he says. One of the ways that I've tried to think through, as your rector, and tried to think through the work I've done here and the cessation. For those of you who may be here for the first time, I've announced my resignation, my retirement. The last Sunday I'll be here is September the 22nd. And I've been mulling over fairly constantly the prayer and work that went into that. And my own recognition that in the last several years I have evolved in many ways, and I've also come to realize that in some sort of benevolent and good way, the congregation and rector have become way too familiar and comfortable with each other. And some of you may think, I've never been comfortable with them, but on the other hand, let's just say, some of you would agree with my prior statement. And the recognition for me a year ago was that I do not want to come to a place where the status quo of me being here is, and my sense of comfort about being your rector, and the satisfaction and the joy and the give and take that we have as a priest and people is some right or possession of mine. As if I could stay as long as I want to. That statement is of a person wearing blinders and seeing only what she or he wants to say or to see. So I invite you as a kind of a meditation on this this sermon is to think about where in your life you just simply wear blinders, and Jesus would disrupt you, would interrupt your comfort, would invite you to see something as stark as a division in family, which I still am not sure he really wanted anybody not to bury their dad, right? Or that he wanted anybody to not go say goodbye to someone before you leave on a journey. But I do believe he understands, having lived among us, he and God in heaven understand human nature. And that we can be more interested in the familiar and the comfortable than in the divine power of God to change the community we're in by this congregation undergoing a search and a change and a study and a recognition of new life. So for me, the realization a year ago was that I need to prepare to retire. And I also, when I think about comfort and status quo, the loss of being the rector of St. Matthew's and what that has meant to my identity and the role that I've played in so many of your lives is going to be absolutely, personally devastating. That's what love does. When something changes, when there has to be this kind of a change, it will be difficult. But there's another form of blinders that I'm willing to look at, and that is to keep our eyes on Jesus Christ, on the love of God, on the presence of God to all of us. And I also have, along with this recognition that there will be a big hole in my heart, I also have this sense of profound awe and wonder about what may come for me, for Crystal and our kids, and for this congregation. But I have to be reminded by Jesus over and over that we're not meant to live without deep roots in character. And we're also not meant to live with certainty. We're not meant to live with some sort of hyper-protected security. We're not meant to live with familiarity and comfort. Familiarity and comfort, as Jesus says about families, can put us to sleep spiritually and otherwise. So I hear this gospel, and I get this sense of Jesus' stress for us, that he bears the stress that you and I know as well. That he carries in his mission and to the cross the things that we fear and the things that we hope for. And so for all of us, as we think about our lives together, we rejoice that Jesus loves us so much that he will set before us challenges that are important. Faith tests, journeys, ways to better understand who you are, who we are, who I am, and how God is moving in our midst. And anytime God is moving in the midst of God's people, I say, without the shadow of a doubt, that is good news.